She was marrying out of obligation. But on the wedding day, the groom's best friend made a shocking confession, and what she did next left the church in shock. Before we continue, comment on which city you are watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. The morning sun slipped through the lace curtains of Emma's bedroom, casting soft shadows over the wedding dress hanging on the closet door. It was a pristine white gown, adorned with delicate embroidery that whispered of timeless traditions. For most women, it would symbolize a dream come true. For Emma, at 25, it felt like an invisible chain, tethering her to a fate she hadn't truly chosen. Since childhood, her parents, owners of a chain of home decor stores in Savannah, Georgia, had mapped out her future with Carl, the son of their business partners. The marriage wasn't just a union, it was a deal, a promise sealed before Emma even understood what love meant. Emma grew up under the weight of expectations. "You'll be the perfect wife for Carl," her mother would say, brushing her long chestnut hair as if shaping not just her appearance but her very soul. Emma complied. She always did. But deep in her chest, a restlessness stirred, a void no diamond ring or compliment could fill. Carl, her fiancé, was the kind of man who turned heads, tall with piercing blue eyes, sun-kissed skin, and hair slicked back with meticulous care. His smile was calculated, designed to charm, but behind that facade was a man who saw the world, and Emma, as extensions of his own ego. "You're lucky to have me," Carl would say, his tone a mix of arrogance and dismissiveness. He didn't ask for her opinions or listen to her dreams. To him, Emma was a pawn in his perfect life, a woman meant to bask in his shadow. At family dinners, he'd talk endlessly about expanding the business, his trips to New York and Miami, and how Emma would behave just right as his wife. She'd force a smile, her fingers gripping the napkin under the table to hide the humiliation burning her cheeks. He'd make cutting jokes about her quiet nature, laughing loudly when she tried to speak, and the guests, oblivious or complicit, would laugh along. "She's shy, but I'll fix that," he'd say, winking at his friends. Each word was a wound, and Emma felt her heart shrink. But there was Alex. Always Alex. He was Carl's opposite, as if the universe had placed them side by side to highlight the contrast between light and dark. Alex, Carl's best friend since high school, was a man of quiet kindness and a heart too big for his own good. His warm brown eyes held a gentleness that comforted, and his shy smile seemed to hide secrets he never dared share. He volunteered at local shelters, helped at the community center, and organized clean-up drives for struggling neighborhoods. He was the kind of man who'd stop to listen to a kid's story or help an elderly woman cross the street with the same care he put into everything. For Emma, Alex was a haven, a safe harbor in the storm of her life with Carl. Since they were 15, when they grew close through Carl's friendship, Emma felt something different for Alex. It was the way he listened, as if her every word mattered. The way he sensed her discomfort at dinners and steered the conversation to something lighter, easing the weight on her shoulders. But Alex never crossed the line. He was loyal to Carl, even if it meant swallowing his feelings. Emma, meanwhile, buried her own emotions deep, a painful secret she couldn't voice. She knew she couldn't love her fiancé's best friend, not when her future was already written. That day, a brunch at Emma's parents' house in Savannah brought both families together to finalize wedding details, just days away. The table was laden with silver trays of southern comfort food, biscuits, grits, and pecan pie, but the air was tense for Emma. Carl dominated the conversation, as usual, boasting about his grand plans. "After the wedding, I'm taking Emma to Napa Valley. Already booked the best vineyard hotel. She doesn't need to worry about a thing," he said with a smug grin. Emma's parents nodded, proud, while she poked at her food, appetite gone. "What do you think, Emma?" her mother asked, trying to include her. Before she could answer, Carl laughed loudly. "She thinks what I tell her to, right, sweetheart?" His tone was playful, but his eyes gleamed with control. Everyone chuckled except Alex, seated across the table, gripping his fork so tightly his knuckles whitened. Emma's face burned. She wanted to speak, to say she had her own dreams, but the words stuck in her throat. She glanced at Alex, seeking silent support, and met his eyes. They held a mix of pity and anger, but he said nothing. He never did. Out of loyalty to Carl, or fear of ruining everything, Alex swallowed his emotions. But in that moment, something in his gaze made Emma's heart race. It was as if he wanted to shout, but chose silence. After brunch, while the men gathered in the living room to talk football and business, Emma slipped out to the backyard patio. The humid savanna air was a relief, but it couldn't ease the weight in her chest. She sat on a wrought iron bench, staring at the magnolia trees her mother tended with care. She felt like those trees, pruned, shaped, forced to grow in a way that wasn't her own. "You okay?" Alex's voice startled her. He stood a few steps away, hands in his pockets, concern etched on his face. She tried to smile, but it faltered. "I'm trying," she whispered. Alex approached, hesitant, and sat beside her. The silence between them was comfortable, yet heavy with unspoken truths. "You're not happy about this wedding, Emma," he said finally, so quietly she almost missed it. Before she could respond, their fingers brushed as they reached for the same fallen magnolia petal on the bench. The touch was fleeting, almost accidental, but it sent her heart racing. For a moment their eyes locked and the world seemed to still. Something unspoken pulsed between them, alive and undeniable. I should get back," Alex said, standing quickly, as if afraid of what might happen if he stayed. Emma nodded, her heart tight. As he walked away, she stayed there, clutching the petal, feeling the void grow. That night in her room, tears streamed down Emma's face as she stared at the wedding dress, a cruel reminder of the future awaiting her. Alone, with the echo of Alex's touch lingering on her fingers, her heart ached. "Why doesn't he say anything?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The magnolia petal from the patio sat on her vanity, its fragile beauty like the dreams she never dared confess. The next morning, Emma's body felt like lead. Her head throbbed, her muscles ached, and chills shook her despite the blankets. Her mother, Linda, entered the room, her face a mix of worry and disapproval. "You need to take care of yourself, Emma. The wedding's in a few days, and you have to look perfect," she said, checking Emma's temperature with her hand. "I'll call the doctor. Don't bother Carl. He's busy with his bachelor party today." Carl's name left a bitter taste in Emma's mouth. She grabbed her phone and, with a weak voice, called her fiancé, hoping for a shred of concern. "It's just a cold, Emma. Don't make a big deal out of it," Carl snapped, his voice as cold as the savannah winter. In the background, she heard muffled laughter and clinking glasses. "Look, I've got plans today. The bachelor party's a big deal. Take care of yourself, okay? I can't miss this." Before she could reply, he hung up. Emma let the phone slip from her hands, her heart heavier than her body. He didn't care. He never did. She was just a detail in his life, a prop to display at the altar. Meanwhile, Alex walked the streets of Savannah's historic district, carrying a bag with medicine and a pack of chamomile tea from the pharmacy. He'd heard about Emma's illness from Linda, who'd called in a rush to ask him to drop off some wedding papers. Alex didn't need an excuse to help, but the thought of seeing Emma, even briefly, made his heart race. He knew it was dangerous. Every step toward her house was a step closer to a truth he'd tried to bury. He loved her, and no one could know. When he rang the bell, Linda opened the door with a tired smile. "Alex, always the lifesaver," she said, letting him in. In the living room, Emma lay on the couch, wrapped in a quilt, her face pale and eyes half closed. Seeing him, she tried to sit up, embarrassed by her vulnerability. "You didn't have to come," she murmured, her voice hoarse. Alex smiled, his warmth lighting up the room. "Couldn't leave you like this," he said, setting the bag on the coffee table. He pulled out the medicine and tea. "Take this for the fever, and the tea. My mom used to say, chamomile soothes even the soul." His words carried a tenderness that brought tears to Emma's eyes. She took the medicine, their fingers brushing, an echo of the patio moment. Her heart raced, but she looked away, afraid of what she felt. Alex sat in an armchair nearby, keeping a respectful distance, but his eyes never left her. He wanted to say so much, that she deserved better, that Carl didn't value her, that he'd give anything to see her happy. But the words stayed locked inside, as always. Instead, he asked hesitantly, "Feeling any better?" Emma looked at him, wanting to spill everything, her fear, her anguish, her emptiness. But she only nodded. "Thanks for coming, Alex. You always show up when I need you." Her words were heavy, and the silence that followed was thick with unspoken truths. Alex's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A text from Carl. "Where you at, man? Waiting for you at the bachelor party. It's going to be epic." Alex glanced at the phone, then at Emma, torn. I should go. Carl's expecting me." She forced a smile, her eyes betraying her pain. "Go on. Have fun for me," she said, a hint of irony masking her sadness. Alex promised to check on her later and left, his heart heavy. When the door closed, Emma let her tears fall freely. Why did Alex make her feel so alive when everything else felt so dead? At the swanky Savannah nightclub hosting Carl's bachelor party, neon lights pulsed and loud music drowned out conversations. Men in tailored suits raised whiskey glasses, while women in sparkling dresses flocked to Carl's charisma. He stood at the center of the room, like a king on his throne, laughing loudly and spinning tales that cast him as the hero. Alex arrived late. Emma's image on the couch burned into his mind. He sat in a corner trying to blend in, but his eyes found Carl, surrounded by women he didn't bother to push away. "Seen my fiancée, Alex?" Carl shouted, raising his glass, his voice slurred from liquor. "Pretty little thing, right? But so proper. You know, she needs a guy like me to keep her in line." His friends roared with laughter, and Alex's stomach churned. He wanted to shout, to defend Emma, to say she was a treasure Carl would never deserve. But loyalty held him back, a rope tightening around his chest. He sipped his drink, trying to drown his anger. As the night wore on, Carl grew looser, crueler. Thinking Alex couldn't hear, he leaned toward a friend and said loud enough to carry, "Emma thinks she's gonna change me, but I'm not giving up my life. Marriage is just for show, man. She'll learn her place." Each word was a dagger. Alex, hidden in the bar's shadows, felt something inside him snap. The loyalty that had kept him silent for years crumbled. He saw Carl laugh with a woman who got too close, his hands wandering where they shouldn't, until shamelessly, he kissed her. It was too much. Alex slammed his glass down and stormed out, the cool night air hitting his face. In his car, engine off, Alex's heart roared like a storm. Parked on a quiet Savannah street, under a sky mocking him with its stars, he punched the steering wheel again, Carl's words echoing like poison. "Marriage is just for show, man. She'll learn her place." Emma's pale face on the couch merged with the cruel scene at the club, where Carl, drunk and arrogant, laughed with women who had no place in a groom's life. Alex closed his eyes, tears burning, and muttered, "She doesn't deserve this. She needs to know who he is." He started the car, hands trembling, unsure where to go. The night was chilly, but his rage and love burned. Alex drove aimlessly, Savannah's historic streets blurring past. He'd always known he loved her, but loyalty to Carl and family traditions had silenced him. Now the silence was unbearable. He pulled over at a scenic overlook by the Savannah River, breathing deeply, searching for courage. "Tomorrow's the wedding," he thought. "If I don't speak now, I'll lose her forever." Meanwhile, at Emma's parents' house, the night felt endless. The fever had eased thanks to Alex's medicine, but the ache in Emma's chest grew. She lay staring at the ceiling, the chamomile tea untouched on the nightstand. Alex's visit had left her more confused. Why did he care so much? Why did his eyes hold a secret she both craved and feared? And why had Carl, her fiancé, dismissed her illness to party? She grabbed her phone, hesitating, and read Carl's last text sent hours ago. "Don't worry, babe. Enjoying my last night of freedom." The word freedom made her shudder. Emma stood shaky and went to the window. The sky was clear, dotted with stars, and she wondered if she'd ever have the courage to break her chains. "I can't live like this," she whispered, tears falling. At the club, Carl's bachelor party raged on. He didn't notice Alex's absence or care. To Carl, the world revolved around him, and everyone, including Emma, should bow to his will. A drunken friend pulled him aside. "Ready for the big responsibility, man?" he asked with a sly grin. Carl laughed, throwing his head back. "Responsibility? Emma's a doll. She does what I say. The wedding's just to keep up appearances." My dad wants the deal locked with her family, and I want my freedom. He winked, nodding at a woman dancing nearby. That's what I call fun. Married or not, I don't change. Alex, still at the Overlook, pulled out his phone and opened a photo from an old 4th of July barbecue where he, Emma, and Carl smiled together. He traced her face on the screen. I can't let this happen, he said, his voice steady for the first time. Confronting Carl would be pointless. He'd never admit his wrongs. But telling Emma, that was different. She deserved the truth, even if it hurt, even if it cost everything. He started the car and drove to Emma's house, but seeing the lights off, he realized it was too late. She was likely asleep. Tomorrow, he vowed. Tomorrow before the wedding, I'll tell her everything. On the wedding morning, Savannah buzzed with anticipation for the grand event. The families had invited half the city, and the church was adorned with white roses and gold ribbons. Emma woke with her body less achy, but her heart still in pieces. She stared in the mirror, her eyes swollen from crying. Linda burst in with a tray of coffee and biscuits. Eat something, honey. It's your big day, she said with a forced smile. Emma nodded, but her mother's words tightened the chain around her chest. Alex hadn't slept. He'd paced his small apartment all night, rehearsing what to say to Emma. Every phrase felt inadequate, every word too small for what he felt. He pictured her fragile eyes and feared his confession might hurt her more. But silence was worse. He showered, threw on a plain shirt, and grabbed his keys. Before leaving, he glanced at a photo in his wallet. Emma from a day they'd volunteered together at a community garden. Her smile was free, genuine, something Carl could never spark. On his way to Emma's, Alex stopped at a coffee shop for her favorite hot chocolate, a small gesture to show he cared. He parked on her street, heart pounding so loud it echoed in his chest. The house was quiet, but he knew she'd be there, likely getting ready. He gripped the hot chocolate like an anchor. Now or never, he thought, heading to the door. Inside, Emma sat at her vanity, the wedding dress still hanging nearby. The makeup artist and hairdresser would arrive soon, but for now she was alone with her thoughts. The weight of what lay ahead suffocated her. She imagined Carl at the altar, his smug smile, and her stomach churned. Then the doorbell rang. Linda called from the kitchen, "I'll get it." But Emma, driven by instinct, stood and went to the door. Opening it, she saw Alex, pale, clutching the hot chocolate, his eyes burning with a determination she'd never seen. "Emma, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "It's about Carl, and about me." Her heart stopped, caught between curiosity and dread. Something in his tone, his urgent gaze, told her this moment would change everything. She opened the door wider, hesitant, and gestured him inside. "Come in, Alex, but what's going on? You're scaring me." Alex stepped into the living room, the familiar space feeling small under the weight of what he carried. Emma, in her robe, hair loose, face pale from her recent fever, looked fragile yet radiant. He set the hot chocolate on the coffee table, needing something to steady his shaking hands. "I didn't want it to be like this," he began, pacing, words fighting to escape. "I tried to stay quiet, Emma. For years I tried. But after last night, I can't anymore." "Last night?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her heart raced, sensing the truth was both a dream and a nightmare. Alex stopped, looked at her, and the pain in his eyes gripped her chest. "At Carl's bachelor party," he said, swallowing hard, "I saw who he really is, and he's not the man you deserve." He took a deep breath as if leaping into an abyss. He was there, drunk, surrounded by women, laughing like the wedding was a joke. He said, "You're just a facade, Emma, that the marriage is just to please the families, but he won't change. He'll never change." The words hit like stones, each one crushing Emma's heart. She stumbled, gripping the sofa's armrest. "No," she murmured, more to herself than to him. But deep down, she knew. Carl's cruel jokes, his possessive comments, his indifference when she was sick, it all made sense now. He never truly wanted her. She was just a trophy, a piece in his power game. Tears came, hot and uncontrollable, but before she could drown in them, Alex stepped closer, his voice shaking with emotion. "Emma, listen to me," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "I didn't come here just to tell you this. I came because I love you." The confession exploded like thunder in the quiet room. Emma froze, eyes wide, heart pounding so hard it might burst. "I've loved you since the first day I saw you. At that 4th of July barbecue when you were 15, smiling at me like I was the only person in the world. I kept it buried for years, out of respect for Carl, for our families, for everything. But I can't watch you suffer anymore. You deserve someone who loves you for you, strong, kind, incredible. And I can't let you walk down that aisle without knowing the whole truth." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma felt the ground vanish beneath her. It was everything she'd dreamed of hearing, but never imagined it would come now, hours before the wedding. Alex's face was pale, his eyes shining with unshed tears, and she saw the truth in every line of him. He wasn't like Carl, who used words to control. Alex was vulnerable, laying his heart bare. But the truth came at a cost. "Why now?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why tell me this now, Alex, when everything's set, when everyone's waiting?" He stepped closer but didn't touch her, as if afraid she'd break. "Because there's still time," he said, his voice intense enough to make the air hum. "There's still time to change your fate, Emma. You don't have to live a lie, not with him." She shook her head, tears streaming down. "And the families. My parents. They'll never forgive me. I don't know if I can." Her voice faltered, and she covered her face, the weight of years of obedience crushing her. Alex wanted to hold her, but held back. Instead, he knelt before her, like a knight before his queen. "I know it's hard, I know it's scary, but you're stronger than you think, Emma, and I promise, if you choose a different path, I'll be by your side. Not as a friend, but as the man who wants to make you happy forever." He took her hand gently, and the touch was a spark, reigniting memories of the patio, the hot chocolate, every moment he'd been there, silently loving her. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Linda entered, startled to see Alex. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sharp with suspicion. Emma pulled her hand back quickly, heart racing. "Nothing, Mum. Alex just brought something for me." She glanced at the hot chocolate, now cold, a flimsy excuse. Alex stood, forcing a smile. "I was just leaving, Mrs. Linda. Just came to wish her luck." But his eyes, fixed on Emma, said so much more. He left, leaving a void that sucked the air from the room. Alone with her mother, Emma felt Alex's confession clash with Carl's betrayal. Linda started talking about the dress, the makeup, the ceremony schedule, but her words were distant noise. Emma stared at her reflection, seeing a stranger. Who was she? The obedient daughter who'd say yes to a man who despised her? Or the woman who for the first time heard the call of true love? The clock ticked relentlessly. Only hours remained until the ceremony, and each second felt like a battle between duty and desire. Alex walked to his car, heart in shards. His confession was a leap into the dark, and he feared he'd pushed Emma too far. But he couldn't have stayed silent, not after seeing Carl's true face. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at the dashboard, replaying her question. Why now? He had no answer to erase her pain, only hope she'd see the truth in his heart. The church was being decorated, Savannah buzzing with excitement for the big event. Alex knew the weight of what he'd done. He'd shattered the facade, but would Emma have the courage to break free? Or would tradition's chains hold her? Linda, oblivious to the storm raging in her daughter's soul, returned with a jewelry box. "Emma, you need to get ready. The makeup artist is almost here, and the photographer wants shots before the church." Her voice was practical, tinged with impatience. Emma nodded mechanically, letting her mother lead her to the bedroom where the wedding dress waited like a sentence. As Linda talked about the veil and pearl earrings, Emma's chest tightened. Each wedding detail, the flowers, the cake, the guests, was a chain, and she didn't know if she had the strength to break them. In the bedroom, the makeup artist began, applying foundation and eyeshadow with precision, as if she could paint the happiness Emma didn't feel. "You'll be the prettiest bride in Savannah," the woman said, smiling. Emma forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed the storm. She thought of Alex kneeling before her, promising a future where she'd be truly loved, and she thought of Carl, laughing at his bachelor party, mocking her with words that cut like knives. How could she say yes to a man like that? But how could she say no to everyone waiting? At Carl's house, the groom prepared with his usual arrogance. He adjusted his tie in the mirror, smirking at his perfect reflection. "Today, I seal the deal," he told a friend, laughing. "Emma's a good catch, and her dad's going to open doors for our business." The friend laughed, slapping his shoulder. "And you'll still have your fun, right? Like at the party." Carl winked, remorseless. "You bet. She knows her place, or she'll learn." Back at Emma's, time sped up. The dress was on, the veil adjusted, her hair pinned in an elegant updo. She was stunning, but her eyes held a sadness no makeup could hide. Linda, emotional, cupped her daughter's face. "You're perfect, sweetheart. Your dad's so proud." Emma swallowed hard, unable to speak. She thought of Alex and everything he'd said that morning. "Mom, what if I don't want to?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Linda frowned, confused. "Don't want what, Emma? It's just wedding jitters. Come on, the car's waiting." The drive to the church was a blur. Emma, in the back of the flower-decorated car, stared out the window, her heart at war. Savannah's streets were filled with onlookers, eager to see the bride of the year, but she felt like a puppet, moved by strings she didn't control. When the car stopped at the church, her father, Tom, opened the door, beaming with pride. "My girl, it's time," he said, offering his arm. Emma took his hand, legs trembling. She looked at the church entrance, where guests were seated, and felt the weight of hundreds of eyes. Inside, Carl stood at the altar, impeccable in his black tux, his smug smile gleaming. He looked like a king awaiting his crown, not a wife. Alex, who'd slipped in at the last minute, sat in the back, nearly hidden. He couldn't take his eyes off the door, heart pounding, waiting for her. When the wedding march began, his breath caught. Emma entered arm in arm with her father, her white dress glowing under the lights. She was an angel, but her eyes were distant, lost. As she walked down the aisle, Emma felt the ground unsteady beneath her. Each step brought her closer to Carl, but further from herself. She glanced at the guests, their smiling faces, and then, for a moment, her eyes found Alex. He was there, in the shadows, his expression a mix of hope and despair. Her heart raced and his words echoed, "You're stronger than you think." She looked away, unable to bear the intensity. At the altar, Carl extended his hand, his smile more possessive than loving. "You look gorgeous, babe," he said, his tone more about ownership than affection. Emma took his hand, her fingers cold and trembling. The priest began, his voice echoing through the church. "We are gathered here to unite this man and this woman." Each word was a weight, a chain tightening around Emma's chest. She looked at Carl, seeing the glint of vanity in his eyes, and remembered Alex's words. He said, "You're just a facade." When the priest asked if anyone had objections, the church fell silent. Emma's heart stopped. She glanced at Carl, then at the floor, and then, as if guided by an unseen force, turned to the crowd. Her eyes searched for Alex, but he was so far back, nearly invisible. The priest continued, now asking her, "Emma, do you take Carl as your husband?" The silence stretched and whispers rippled through the guests. Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding like a drum. She looked at Carl, his brow now furrowed with impatience. And then, with a voice that surprised even her, she said, "I'm sorry. I can't go through with this." A shockwave swept through the church. Carl froze, his smile collapsing into fury. "What are you saying?" he hissed, low enough for only her to hear. But Emma didn't answer. She let go of his hand, lifted her dress, and ran down the aisle, ignoring her mother's cries and the guests' murmurs. Outside, the fresh air hit her face, but she didn't stop. Her eyes scanned the churchyard, desperate, searching for Alex. He wasn't there. Panic gripped her. "Alex!" she shouted, her voice breaking, but only the wind answered. Had he given up? Had she decided too late? Her heart ached, but a certainty grew. She couldn't go back. Not now, not after choosing truth. The afternoon breeze stung Emma's face, but it didn't ease the panic rising in her chest. "Alex!" she called again, her voice hoarse with emotion. The churchyard's silence was cruel, answered only by the murmurs of guests spilling out, stunned by her flight from the altar. She felt their stares, the weight of judgment, but none of it mattered. Only one thing did: finding him. Where was Alex? Had he left, thinking she'd choose Carl? Her heart tore at the thought. "Please, Alex, don't go," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. She ran toward the parking lot, the veil trailing behind, the heavy dress like an anchor pulling her back to the life she'd rejected. In the lot's corner, under a live oak's shade, she saw him. Alex was about to open his car door, head bowed, shoulders slumped as if carrying the world. "Alex!" she shouted, her voice echoing. He froze, then turned slowly. When their eyes met, his held shock, hope, and fear. Emma didn't think. She ran to him, her white shoes sinking into the grass, and threw herself into his arms, wrapping him in an embrace that said everything words couldn't. For a moment neither spoke. She just felt his warmth, his racing heartbeat, the safety only he offered. Alex hesitated, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her with a strength that blended relief and love. "Emma," he murmured, voice thick. "I can't believe it." She looked up, tears mixing with a budding smile. "I couldn't say yes to him, Alex. Not after what you told me. Not after knowing who you are, what you feel, what I feel too." He touched her face, wiping a tear with his thumb, his eyes shining with unguarded emotion. "I love you," he said simply, as if it were the only truth that mattered. Inside the church, chaos reigned. Carl, still at the altar, felt his blood boil. How dare she? How could Emma, the woman he saw as his possession, humiliate him in front of everyone? Guests whispered, their shocked and curious gazes cutting him like knives. "What's she thinking?" he hissed, fists clenched. Linda, crying, tried to calm the crowd, while Tom, Emma's father, was red with rage, unable to process his daughter's defiance. Carl, unable to bear the shame, stormed out the back, ignoring his friend's calls. He needed to escape, to drown the humiliation in anything. Booze, women, anything to feel in control again. In the parking lot, Emma held Alex's hands, her eyes locked on his. "Now I know who's always been there for me," she said, tears in her eyes but her voice steady. "It's with you I want to start over." Alex smiled, a smile that lit up the world and kissed her forehead, a gesture so gentle it warmed her heart. "Then let's start over together," he said, his voice full of promise. But before they could plan further, Linda appeared, her face red with fury and tears. "Emma, how could you do this, humiliate our family like this? What's going on here?" she demanded, pointing at Alex as if he were the cause. Emma felt her mother's glare, but for the first time didn't lower her head. "Mom, I couldn't live a lie. Carl doesn't love me. He never did. But Alex, he sees me for me." Linda shook her head, incredulous. "You're throwing everything away. What'll your father say? What'll people say?" Emma took a deep breath, gripping Alex's hand tighter. "I don't care what they'll say. I chose to be happy." Linda turned away, saying nothing more, and returned to the church, leaving a painful but liberating void. That night, Carl, still seething, decided to erase the humiliation. He packed a bag and told his friends he was heading to Atlanta for a while, where no one knew his shame. "I need space from this mess," he said bitterly. When he learned days later that Emma and Alex were together, his rage flared. "How dare she choose him? And how dare he betray me like that?" he shouted, slamming a bar table. But the anger faded fast. Soon, he was back to his old life. Parties, drinks, women who made him feel like a king again. For Carl, love never mattered. The blow to his ego did. Emma and Alex knew they couldn't stay in Savannah. The judgmental stares, her parents' anger, the weight of tradition, it was all a chain trying to pull them back. "Let's go," Alex said one night, sitting on the couch in his small apartment, planning their future. "A new city, a fresh start, just you and me." Emma smiled, her heart light for the first time in years. "Yes," she said simply. They packed what little they had and moved to a small town in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where no one knew their past, where they could just be Emma and Alex, two hearts who chose each other. Years passed, and their love bloomed like the magnolias where it all began. In their mountain home, Emma gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, with Alex's warm brown eyes and her shy smile. They built a life together, not just of love, but of purpose. Alex, with his dedication, started a non-profit that grew, drawing donors and transforming communities. Emma, discovering her passion for art, opened a studio that became a local gem. Together, they built a small empire, not of wealth, but of impact, proving true love could move mountains. 5 years after the altar escape, Emma sat with the twins asleep in the next room and picked up her phone. She opened a message to her parents, who'd cut contact after the scandal. Heart racing, she wrote, "Mum, Dad, I know you didn't understand my choice, but I had to be happy. Alex gave me that. We have 2 beautiful kids, a life built on love and respect. Our work is growing, and we'd love to help with the store if you need it. I didn't choose against you. I chose for me. I hope we can reconnect someday." She attached a photo of the twins laughing, Alex smiling in the background as he always did for her. Sending the message, Emma felt a peace she'd never known. She looked at Alex, reading on the porch, and knew she'd chosen right. The man who loved her, respected her, made her feel alive. They didn't need anyone's forgiveness, but she hoped her parents would one day see what she saw, a love worth more than any tradition, one that built a family and a legacy. As the sun set, painting the sky orange, Emma took Alex's hand, knowing she'd found her true happily ever after. What did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments with a score from 0 to 10. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to follow all our stories. Thank you very much and see you in the next video. If you've made it this far, after feeling every emotion, every anguish, and every triumph in this story, you already know that life is like a soap opera, full of twists, heart-wrenching moments, and endings that surprise us. But above all, it's a journey of faith. Faith in yourself, in love, in a greater purpose guiding every step, even when the path is shrouded in shadows. Today I invite you to look within and believe that everything, every tear and every smile, has a reason, a meaning being woven by invisible hands. Think for a moment. How many times have you faced a moment when all seemed lost? An impossible choice, a fear that felt bigger than you, a door closing without promising another? Maybe you're living that now, carrying the weight of expectations that aren't yours, or wrestling with the doubt of following your heart. This story, with its passions and sacrifices, reminds us that these moments aren't the end. They're the start of something new, something only faith can reveal. Life isn't an accident, it's a plan, and every challenge is an invitation to find your strength. I want to share a surprise, something that might make your heart beat faster. A few years ago, I met a woman named Sarah who heard a story like this in a moment of despair. She was on the verge of giving up her dreams, trapped in a job that suffocated her, and a relationship that diminished her. But one night, while reading a book about courage and choices, she felt a call. It was as if the words hugged her, saying, "You are stronger than you think." Sarah decided to change. She ended the relationship, quit her job, and started teaching kids in an underserved community. Today, she runs a school that has transformed the lives of dozens of families, and her smile shines brighter than ever. What seemed like the end was, in fact, the beginning of her purpose. This is the message I want to leave with you. Everything in life has a reason. The pains you carry, the decisions that scare you, the dreams that seem out of reach, they're all shaping you for something greater. Faith is what holds you up when the ground disappears. It's believing that even in the darkness there's a light guiding you. Maybe you're standing at your own altar, facing a choice that seems impossible. Maybe the world tells you to stay quiet, to accept what's safe. But as this story showed us, safety isn't always happiness. Sometimes you have to run to the parking lot, shout a name, and choose the path that makes your heart sing. Have you ever stopped to think about the moments you thought you wouldn't survive? That test that seemed impossible, that loss that hurt like an endless void, that time you thought you'd never smile again. Yet here you are, reading these words, stronger than you realize. Every obstacle was a step, every tear a seed. Life is always teaching you, preparing you for a purpose you might only understand tomorrow or years from now. But it's there, waiting for you. And here's the final surprise to warm your heart. The power of your story is in your hands. You're not just a viewer of this soap opera, you're the protagonist of your own. Every choice you make, no matter how small, is a thread in the tapestry of your life. And like Sarah, like so many others who dared to believe, you can turn your moments of doubt into unforgettable beginnings. Faith isn't expecting everything to be perfect. It's trusting that even in the imperfections, there's a greater plan. So, dear reader, when life challenges you, when fear whispers that you're not enough, remember this moment. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and trust. Everything has a reason. You are stronger than you think, braver than you imagine. And like the best soap operas, your story is destined for an ending full of light, love, and meaning. Believe in your heart and follow your faith. If you agree, say amen.